Good morning. Hello, all. How are you all? We're so happy to have you here. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our April monthly meeting of the Slave Legacy History Coalition. We're absolutely thrilled to have you all here. Thank you so much for your patience. I know we're not starting right on time, but I do want to let you know that my father, Dennis Lloyd, and my sister, Egypt Lloyd, are both here in spirit and happy, certainly thrilled for today's speaker, Ms. Tara Roberts. I will let Ms. Roshana introduce her a little bit later, but as per usual, we've got announcements for upcoming events in the New England area and a little further afield about our Slave Legacy History Coalition. We did send them out in our monthly newsletter, but again, here's another reminder for you for various events. First up, launching on April 15th of this month, we've got the Slave Legacy History Coalition podcast. And what it is just another way to get some of our wonderful speakers, share them with your friends and family. It's going to be available where all podcasts are available. So that's going to be on Apple Music, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And we're going to be starting with our oldest speakers. And then moving forward. So you'll have the entire catalog, not just on YouTube, but also via podcast. As a reminder, our May 13th speaker is going to be Dr. Jeannie Williams, and she is going to be discussing her book and her scholarship, Oceans of Kinfolk, the Coastwise Traffic of Enslaved Persons in New Orleans. So we're very excited, expanding our field of scholarship outside of the New England area for next month. So get excited for that. Now, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, April 12th, from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's an online webinar. It's a free webinar from the Black History Studies. It's the title of the workshop, the presentation is Faith Under the Lash, Caribbean Enslaved Narratives, Power and Resistance. Again, it's a Zoom webinar. Tickets are free, and I can share the link in the chat towards the end of after I finish speaking. Author Carrie Lee Merritt has written a book that we'd like to share with you. It's called An Inconvenient Woman, The Extraordinary Life of Lillian Smith, a Southerner who defied Jim Crow America. We're excited to share this work about Lillian Smith, who is a Southern white woman, but a key figure in early civil rights movement. And we don't want her history to be forgotten. So that's why we're sharing the book with you. Another event later in April, April 23rd and 24th. Now, this is going to be an in-person. It's at the Ruth J. Simmons Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice on April 23rd and 24th. It's Reconsidering Port Cities, Critical Commemoration of Slavery and the Transatlantic Legacies. And so that promises, again, to be a wonderful event. Now, our last month's speaker, Professor Linford Fisher of Brown University, he is going to be giving a presentation later tonight. So if you're feeling like, wow, I loved hearing what Mr. Tara Roberts had to say, and I would like to continue on with scholarship tonight. I know there were some questions about King Philip's War during our last presentation, and he will be talking surviving slavery. So you'll get another taste of Professor Linford Fisher. As always, our Slave Legacy History Coalition progress report is available. We are a nonprofit. We are always accepting donations. If you're feeling altruistic, magnanimous, generous, all of the adjectives, we will happily share what we've been up to from a fiscal standpoint with you. Just reach out to me and I'll share my email. It's Jordan at Slave Legacy History Coalition. We're always looking for volunteers, especially if you have capacity or experience in the development sector. We'd be happy to speak with you. Um, Thank you. That makes all of my announcements for April. There'll be more in May. Now I'd like to turn it over to the wonderful Ms. Roshana Moore Evans, who will be introducing today's illustrious speaker. Ms. Roshana?
Hi, Jordan, and please don't call me Miss Rush. I mean, maybe it's not like like I'm like 20, like 35, well, 80 years old. But good to see you, Jordan. I am truly honored and good morning. First of all, good morning, everyone. I am the chair of the Slave Legacy History Coalition, and I am truly honored to introduce our speaker today, Tara Roberts. I had the privilege of meeting Tara last year when she visited Boston to promote her book. It was one of those rare encounters that stays with you. It was warm, grounding, and deeply inspiring. I felt incredibly fortunate to spend time with her, to hear more about her journey, to meet some of her local and individuals and friends who shaped and supported her work, and to learn about the vision that she is looking to carry forward. After that meeting, I immediately knew she would be a powerful voice for this convening, and I was grateful to connect her with Dennis in Egypt, even more grateful that she is joining us here today. So I'm going to give a brief bio, maybe not so brief because I feel like I have to celebrate her. So you all read a little bit about her bio in the communications from the SLHC, but I want to share that Tara Roberts has spent the last 7 years following, diving with, and documenting the work of Black scuba divers as they search for and help uncover slave shipwrecks around the world. Through this work, she is not only helping to recover lost stories, lost histories, but also reshaping how we understand memory, ancestry, and belonging. Her journey was brought to life through the award-winning podcast, which I have listened to several times along with my daughter, Into the Depths, produced by the National Geographic and featured in the March 2022 issue of the National Geographic magazine, where she made history as the first Black female explorer to appear on its cover. That same year, she was named the Rolex National Geographic Explorer of the Year, and she now serves, I believe, now serves as the Explorer in Residence at the National Geographic Society. Her recent book, Written in the Waters, I have both the hard copy of the book and the audiobook. Written in the Waters, a memoir of history, home, and belonging, published in January 2025. It's a powerful reflection of her journey, one that weaves together history, identity, and the enduring search for a connection. And before this chapter of her work, Tara built a dynamic career as a magazine editor, indie publisher, nonprofit communications director, and editor of nonfiction books, which I learned that she had a love for nonfiction books when she was growing up. But her work centers on storytelling that informs, uplifts, and empowers. She calls Atlanta home, the ATL, but as she often says, have a suitcase, will travel. And in many ways, that spirit of movement, discovery, and deep listening is exactly what her work invites all of us to do today. So please join me in warmly welcoming her, giving her a Boston and beyond welcome, welcoming Tara Roberts to this session today.
Wow, what a beautiful introduction, Roshana. Thank you. And it is so wonderful to see your lovely face. I also felt the same way when we met in Boston, just like you are a kindred spirit. So I feel really honored that you recommended me for the Slave Legacy History Coalition, to be a part of it. And I'm really honored to be here. Um, I think it's amazing that you all are a part of this and that you're setting such a great example of why this history is so important. So it is just, again, it's my honor to be here. Thank you for getting up early to listen to part of my journey. So I always do this before I start. I always like to just take a moment to give us an opportunity to connect with each other. And I think that's especially important over Zoom calls because it's so easy to have reminders going off, emails coming in, distractions around the house. And I want us to take a moment and get fully present so that we can truly connect with each other this morning. I want this to feel like a safe and sacred space. Um, because for me, this work, it's ultimately about connection. It's connection to the past, but it's also connection to the future. It's connection to self, and it's connection to each other. So I want to invite you to take just a moment to breathe in with me. I'm going to close my eyes and take 3 breaths. And I'm going to ask you to count on your own. You definitely don't have to close your eyes if you don't want to, but just 3 breaths with 3 counts in and 3 counts out so that we can all feel the energy in this space. Okay, let's do it. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I feel the energy. I feel connected to all of you. So really, thank you for letting me do that. Um, so as you heard from Roshana, I spent the last 8 years, and I can't believe it's been 8 years. Like, what? How did this time just go by? But I've spent these last 8 years following, diving with, and telling stories about a group of Black scuba divers who dive for slave shipwrecks around the world. And I have to say that it has been an incredible journey. The first thing that I want you to know is that I was not a diver before I started this work. Not at all. As you heard, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, which is landlocked. We don't know much about the ocean in Atlanta. And I also, and it's getting increasingly embarrassing to admit this in front of the learned crowds that I've been speaking to, but I also wasn't that interested in history, to tell you the truth. I am a sci-fi fantasy girl. So I live in my imagination or I live in the future, but I wasn't that interested in the past. It wasn't until 2016 that something happened that changed all of that for me. If you can all flash back to that year, 2016, a lot was happening on the national stage. For me, that was a year when I became really present to the fractures that existed in our national consciousness around race. And I knew I wanted to do something to help heal the space, but I didn't know what to do. I had just moved to Washington, D.C. to take a job at a nonprofit. Um, but that nonprofit job didn't have anything to do with this subject matter. And I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do. So I felt really out of step. I felt unhappy. I felt like I was off purpose somehow. But that year, this was 2017 now, that year, I got a ticket to the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. And that museum literally changed the trajectory of my life. Um, I don't know how many of you have been. I imagine in this crowd, lots of folks have been. I can't really see, but I don't know, like if you're feeling interactive and you want to put a little note in the chat window or show some hearts. I'm curious Like, how many people have gone to that museum? And if you think that, yes, I see hearts. Okay, yes, right? Amazing place. If you have not had a chance to visit it yet, I highly recommend the next time you're in DC, go. It is full of incredible stories. Because I lived in DC at the time, I got this ticket and then I got a chance to go back again and again. And I took my time going through the museum, going floor after floor, really looking at each exhibit. And I ended up on the second floor. On the second floor above ground is this tiny little floor that most people skip because it's the archival floor. So that's where, well, actually, all of you might not have skipped this because I know that you like to dig into your past. But I think most people skip it because it doesn't have a lot of exhibits on it. But it had one exhibit with this one picture that stopped me in my tracks. It was a picture of a group of primarily Black women in wetsuits on a boat. I had never seen a picture of a group of Black women in wetsuits on a boat before. So there was just something about the women. Oh, they just looked so beautiful to me, so free, so joyous. I was really mesmerized by that picture. And the thing is that it wasn't like a glamorous shot. It wasn't a portrait. It was a snapshot of these women. But when I saw it, I felt like it's going to sound like an exaggeration, and it is, but I felt like the clouds parted. I felt like the whole floor went dark, and there was like a spotlight on this picture. It's like maybe the angels were singing in that moment. There was something about it that just touched my heart. And it actually reminded me of my dreams as a child. As I said, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. It was just me and my mom. I'm an only child. And my mom was a reading teacher at that time. I don't know how the universe matches children and parents, but I feel like my mother was the perfect mother for me. And that's because I loved books. Like I was one of those super nerdy kids who would be under the covers late at night with my flashlight just because I had to finish the story. I couldn't put it down. And my favorite books of all time, like my favorite books were sci-fi and fantasy books. That's where that love began. I loved stories with magic or dragons or heroes out on a quest to save the kingdom. My favorite book of all times was Madeline L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. Is there any love out there for Madeline L'Engle, A Wrinkle in Time? Any hearts? That was my favorite book of all times. I really wanted Mrs. What's It to come knock on my door and invite me to come save the universe with her. I loved it. But as I grew older, I began to realize that none of the characters in these books that I loved so much ever looked like me. The books that had characters that looked like me were often about Black pain or Black trauma. Rarely were they about our adventures, our curiosities, our wonder. I knew early on that I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to be a writer, but I really wanted to be an adventurous storyteller who was out in the world finding stories, telling stories. But as I grew older, I began to think like maybe I couldn't really live a life of adventure because I never saw it. So flashback to that moment in the museum when I see this picture of these Black women divers. And then I read on to find out, well, who are they and what do they do in the world? And I find out that they're part of this group called Diving with a Purpose, and that their mission is to help search for and document slave shipwrecks around the world. I remember thinking, wait, what? Wait, they do what? Are you kidding me? Like, who would even think to do such a thing? Not only were these women adventurers, but to me, it felt like they were on a real life quest to save our kingdom. So I knew that I wanted to be a part of this somehow. So I reached out and eventually they invited me to come join them. I have to say that I never, ever could have predicted that scuba diving would be the thing to enter my life and change it so completely. But it did. It gave me a way to encounter the ocean, and it gave me a way to have adventures. Now, I know a lot of you in New England, like y'all get in the water. So I'm curious, like how many scuba divers are in the audience today? Give me some hearts. No hearts? Are there no scuba divers in the audience today? Okay, that's okay. Are there snorkelers in the audience? A few snorkelers? Yes, okay. We see a few snorkelers. Yay! And if you didn't press the heart button, if you're not a snorkeler, not a scuba diver, tell me, did the rest of you at least put your foot in the water and kind of shake it around at the beach? Okay. Well, I have to say, I didn't know that the ocean was such a magical and beautiful place. So I want to play a little clip for you. If you could change to the next slide. So there's me in my scuba gear. But I want to play an audio clip for you. And just this image will not change. I'm going to play a couple of audio clips this morning. So I invite you to close your eyes and just listen. Blue, as far as my eye can see. Salt spray tickling my face. The motion of the boat as it skims across the surface. It's beating us toward adventure. Next to me in the boat are women and men, all in wetsuits, all ages. Afros and braids are flying in the wind. They all look invincible. And they've got these big smiles on their faces. Out there, ahead of us, is a ship that's been buried under the waves for over 300 years. A ship like that once brought our ancestors to this side of the world.
Some incredible stories that these vessels have, but they're out of memory, out of mind. Why is that?
Mask on. I take one more look around, and then I tip over the side. I drop in. I love scuba diving. The way I feel like I'm in another universe, like I'm flying. I'm under the water, but here I can actually breathe. As I trained with Diving with a Purpose, and it took me a year to finish all of my certifications and to get ready for them, I started to learn more about the history of the transatlantic slave trade. And I learned things that I'd never heard before. So there are two stats that I'd like to share, and I always share these stats because I think that they best contextualize what we know and what we don't know about this history. So the first stat that I always share is that there were approximately 12,000 ships that brought 12.5 million Africans to the Americas. So 12,000 ships. What I realized is that as I was growing up, I couldn't tell you the name of a single one of those ships. And yet I could tell you about the Mayflower, or I could tell you all about the Titanic, but I couldn't tell you the name of a single one of those ships. That didn't, excuse me, feel right to me. The other stat that I learned, and this is the one that sits heaviest on my heart, is that there were approximately 1.8 million Africans who died in the crossing from Africa to the Americas. So we're not talking about the number of people who died on the march to the boats or the number of people who died once the ships arrived and they were enslaved. Just in the crossing, 1.8 million people, not 1,000 people, not 100,000 people, which are still horrible numbers, but 1.8 million people. Who's mourning that enormous loss of life? Where are the memorials to honor those people? I realized as I went deeper into this work that there are whole chapters of history that are just missing. And I wanted to help bring that history back into memory. So I applied for a National Geographic grant. Didn't think I would get it, but I did. And it allowed me to travel with the divers. I want to show you a picture of some of the divers that I met along the way. Everywhere I went, I took pictures of them. I made them all pose for photo shoots for me. I'm a writer, but because it was Nat Geo, I was like, I got to pretend like I'm a photographer. So the youngest person here is 16 years old, and the oldest is 86. These are policemen, yoga teachers, students, archaeologists, business owners, dancers, engineers, pilots, military officers. They're people from all walks of life and all over the world. They're just people who love scuba diving and who have now been trained to assist maritime archaeologists in a technique called underwater archaeology mapping. If you go to the next slide, that's what it looks like under the water. So I started telling stories for Nat Geo about the divers, about the ships, about my own transformation doing this work. And as you heard from Roshana in the beginning, we produced a 6 episode narrative podcast called Into the Depths, which tells the stories of 6 of the ships. And you get to hear from the divers. You get to imagine the wrecking events. It's a narrative podcast. And this is a little bit of a commercial break. Like Into the Depths is playing on all audio platforms. So if you'd like to listen, you can. And as you heard, I wrote the cover story for the magazine and became the first Black woman explorer in Nat Geo's over 130-year history to ever be featured on the cover. And I wrote my book, Written in the Waters, which was released last year. If you go to the next slide, you can see the cover and the podcast and the book. And with each of these tellings, I began to see ever deepening layers to this story. And I realized that the stories were popular. They were gaining a lot of attention. And that's because I think we approach this history through a lens of honoring and healing versus a lens of trauma and pain. So I want to play another clip for you of what my mother's pastor said to me when I was visiting her house one day, and he happened to be there. Now, as you heard, I'm my mother's only child. And so even though when I started this work, I was grown, like you can see, I'm pretty grown now. So I was grown, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Um, but when my mom found out that I would be traveling around the world, she was like, "Oh Lord, my baby is traveling around the world. I need the pastor to bless her." So she asked him to bless me. And I have to say, that is not something that I ever would have done on my own, but I'm glad she did because his words made me realize that even more was at stake. Here's the clip you can play.
If you can get in tune with the essence, the spirit of of our ancestors who were lost during that middle passage, invite their blessing on the work. You can do so by your prayer meditation. You come across names, speak their names, speak the names, speak the names. And then ask them to bless you. Ask them for permission to tell the story. Ask them to go before you to make the way straight, smooth, and harmonious.
Listen, I hold their stories in my arms. Stories from the depths of my ocean. I've memorized every inch of their heartbeats. There is a song growing in my waves we have not heard before. Listen. It speaks their names.
That was Bishop Jack Bomar of Hillside International Chapel and Truth Center in Atlanta, and Aaliyah Pierce, who is another Nat Geo explorer and a spoken word artist. As some of you may know, the ancestors are a huge part of African spirituality. But that wasn't something I knew much about or had really even thought about before then. But Bishop helped me realize that the ancestors were calling on me and others, including some of you in this room. I'm clear I'm not the only one. They're calling on us to bring their stories back into memory. When I would think of captive Africans on those boats or enslaved people on the plantations, I have to be honest, I didn't really see individual people. I saw statistics. I saw faceless victims. But these people were mothers, they were fathers, maybe they were dreamers or poets or mathematicians or scientists. They were whole beings and they deserve to be remembered. You know, they say that the Atlantic is one of the most turbulent oceans on the planet. And some believe it's because it's churning with those 1.8 million souls. But what if, I began to realize, like, what if by speaking their names and the names of the ships, we could help raise their stories from the depths in their fullness, in their wonder, with love, with honor, with respect, and finally heal a wound that has festered in this world for far too long. For me, that is the promise of this work. I want to share a really concrete example, because even though I said all of that, it still might feel abstract to you. But I want to share a concrete example of just how this work of documenting slave ships can help us move to a new place. So this is the story of the São José Paquete de Africa. It was a Portuguese ship that left from Mozambique Island in the north of Mozambique and was on its way to Brazil. And this is another example for me of what I didn't know about the transatlantic slave trade. I thought that only West African countries were a part of the Atlantic trade, but somewhere between 500,000 and a million Africans were trafficked off the east coast of Mozambique. So this ship was on its way to Brazil, but it went around the Horn of South Africa, and it went down in 1794. We know that it had some 500 people of the Makua ethnic group on board. About half of the captives died that night, and the other half were sold into slavery in South Africa. Now, ordinarily, this is where the story might end. But thanks to this work, the story continues. A team called the Slave Rex Project, and this is a team that is housed at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and it's made up of different organizations. So Diving with a Purpose is a part of the Slave Rex Project. So a team from SWP or Slave Rex Project discovered the wreck in 2015. And when they discovered it and realized that the Makua people were the people that were in the cargo hold, they decided to reach out to the Makua descendants that still lived in and around Mozambique Island to tell them about the wreck. And those descendants decided to hold a celebration because they finally knew what happened to their ancestors. So on that day, they celebrated with music and dance and food and speeches. And at the end, the Makua chief gave a gift of a cowrie shell encrusted basket to Dr. Lonnie Bunch. Lonnie Bunch is the founding director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Such a mouthful. And he's also the present head of all Smithsonian museums in DC. So the chief gave Lonnie the basket, and then he tasked him with a mission. I'm going to let Lonnie tell you what he said. If you can move to the next slide.
If you can get in tune with
And this is Mozambique Island.
And so I'm looking at this beautiful cowrie shell encrusted vessel, just gleaming whiteness. And when I opened it, it was full of dirt. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm not clear what this is. Why is this a gift? What did his ancestors ask? And then he sort of teared up and said that his ancestors have asked that when I go back to South Africa where the ship was, if I could sprinkle the soil over the site of the wreck, so for the first time since 1794, my people can sleep in their own land. I lost it. I'm crying. I'm trying to not sort of, drop the vessel, and I'm just thinking about the contradictions, the beauty that surrounds me, the fact that I'm a historian, but this is about how living people feel and think, and to have this vessel, it almost was as if I was holding an iron weight. It was so heavy. It wasn't heavy, but it seemed heavy, and it made me think, please don't drop it. Please give this the care it deserves.
So Lonnie did not drop the vessel. He gave it the care that it deserves. And he and the team did go back to South Africa, and they did as the Makua chief requested. They held a ceremony with dignitaries and media and divers. They chose 3 divers, an African American, a Mozambican, and a South African to go to the site. If you can go to the next slide.
And so
as you can see, the weather that day was pretty terrible. It was overcast and rainy. It was dark with stormy clouds. The sea was rough and the swells were high. The divers actually had to grip arms and hold on to each other to walk out as far as they could to get as close as they could to the site. But they did it. And this happened in 2015. So this was before I had started this work. So I wasn't there that day. But all the people I interviewed reported the same thing. They said that after the ceremony was performed, and once the divers made it back to shore, the clouds suddenly dispersed and the sun came out and the sea and the waves quieted down. Now, maybe, the wind patterns were just destined to change on that day in that particular moment. But perhaps those ancestors there were released on that day and something was healed for them. I know something healed for Lonnie and all the divers and dignitaries present. Something healed years later for me when I heard the story. And perhaps something is healing for you today. I know on some level that this seems like hard, traumatic, sad work, but to me it isn't, because this isn't only about the heaviness and the shame of the past. To me, this is about moving through that pain to get to a new place. I know that when I am below the surface, all I feel is agency and power. And that's because we have these historians, these divers, these archaeologists. We have raised our hands and we've said we're not going to wait for the approval of others to prioritize this history. We're saying that this history matters and that we volunteer to bring it back into memory. Because here's the thing. The transatlantic slave trade is not just Black history, nor is it just American history. The transatlantic slave trade is global history, and it changed everything. It is one of the most monumental events in human history, and it deserves to be more than a footnote in our history books. Those 400 years of transporting 12.5 million Africans to the Americas created the foundation of the world we have today. It created wealth, it destroyed wealth, it changed coastlines and landscapes, it created the trade routes that we use now, and it ushered in the rise of new geopolitical powers that still dominate today. And maybe this is the most important thing of all. The transatlantic slave trade connected this world in a way that cannot be undone. Europe, Africa, South America, North America, and the Caribbean are forever intertwined because of those 12,000 ships voyaging across the Atlantic. Just think of the transfer of beliefs, of cultures, of religions, of ideas, of goods, of people. We are a part of each other. So, what if we could lean into that connection? Could it change how we see each other? And if how we see each other changes, might that also change how we think we're responsible for each other? So for me, this is a fresh story. It's full of potential and opportunity for profound healing. I think it offers us a clear roadmap to understanding the fullness of our collective journey. So this is the work, and I feel so honored and thankful to be involved in it. I actually get to be that adventurous storyteller that I dreamed of being as a kid. And there's so much more to do. Of those 12,000 ships that are out there, they estimate that approximately 1,000 have wrecked. And to date, less than 20 have been found and properly documented. So we got a lot to do. And Nat Geo has invited me to become an explorer in residence so that we could birth a part two of this project. We're dreaming up a really unique way to honor those that were lost in the Atlantic Ocean. And I have to tell you, it's going to be amazing. Like, it is an awesome project, and I can't really tell you about it yet. But if you want to stay in the loop, if you go to the next slide, here's some ways that you can be a part of the journey. I hope that we'll be announcing the project soon. So lastly, I want to play one final clip of a conversation that I had with my nieces, because ultimately I do this work for them, for the next generation. When I was working in the magazine world, I met Dr. Maya Angelou once, and she said this to me. She said, Miss Roberts, I can't do her voice. She was very formal. She said, Miss Roberts, do you know that you are paid for? The people who came before you have already paid for you. That moved me deeply, and it made me begin to consider how I'm paying for the next generation. So I want to share this clip. Do you think it matters to know that kind of history, where we came from? I'm here with my nieces, Wu and Shai, trying to be the conduit for them that my ancestors have been for me. We're learning from each other.
I think it matters. I think it's pretty cool.
Let me ask you this. Do you know that your ancestors, like way, way, way back, came from Africa? Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that my ancestors came from Africa.
Do you guys know about the work I'm doing?
The history of the slave ships and about your family.
Yeah. I'm following these divers as they search for slave shipwrecks. So what do y'all think about that?
I think that's pretty cool. You get to explore more about the world and you get to learn more stuff that you didn't already know. And I think that's cool.
Do you care about that history? Like knowing all that far back?
It's awesome. It's cool, like when you get older, you'll be able to tell people that you had this cool aunt and she did all this stuff and she got to explore the world.
I wish I could do it, but I still got school to finish up, which is boring. Because if I didn't have school, I would have been joined you on it, of course.
Will y'all come scuba diving with me one day?
Yes, I will.
Yes, I will.
Yes, I will.
Yes, you will. All right. This is the new saying. Instead of Obama's yes, I can, it's yes, we will.
Yes.
So I spoke to my nieces when they were kids, and now they're teenagers, and I'm so proud to say that I got them in the water. Here are my two nieces in a wetsuit. If you can go to the next slide. Do you think it matters? Yep, there they are. And they keep asking me when they can dive next. So super proud of them. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Wow. Absolutely outstanding. Oh my goodness. I was in tears a couple of times. Thank you so much. I think you can see from the reactions how impactful the work that you are doing has been. I'm wondering if you have some time to answer a few questions. I know we've got one from Mr. Robert Bellinger.
Hello, Tara. How are you? I'm not sure if you remember me. When you spoke in Concord, I was one of the people who joined you for dinner.
Nice.
And at the time, I hadn't gotten your book yet. I had been thwarted at several bookstores that didn't have it. But since I have gotten it and have read it and followed your journey over the whole book, loved it, and then came up with a surprise that we do have a mutual friend, Karima Grant. in
I love
Senegal.
it.
I've known her from there. She's a good friend. I've been to her house. I've eaten that good food. I've been to her school. In fact, the first, when I was going to stay for a month, her and her friend Angela Franklin, I don't know if you met Angela, um, they found me a housing with her aunt, Amelia.
Mm,
And I stayed there. And then they found me a great place that I kept for 7 years when I went back.
mm.
So, yes, we share more than just the valley, but a good friend as well.
I
Good to
love
see you
that so
again.
much. It's great to see you. That's fantastic. I'll have to tell Karima that we connected again.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got Miss Ellen Fine. Do you have a question?
First, a bit of a comment, Tara. This is so beautiful. I mean, I'll just say, from a family of people who survived pogroms in Ukraine and probably the Holocaust, and people who shared decades and centuries of trauma. I think it's so beautiful to find a beauty way of healing. Yes, there's still going to be pain and trauma involved, but you've really given like this incredible gift. There's so much spaciousness and beauty. And it's like being under ocean, like being with you, the mermaid who's leading us to these places. So I'm so grateful for that. And I'm near Boston. And so my question on a practical level is, are there many shipwrecks of enslaved people off the coast of New England? And a place that would jump into my mind would be like Bristol, Rhode Island, that area out there. So I'm just wondering if you have any way to enlighten us on that.
Yeah, we know of one in particular. I'm sure that there are more, but there's been work to document the Ouida. I believe it's the Ouida that's off of the coast of Boston. Don't quote me on that, though. I might have mixed up the names. But yeah, I mean, the thing about these ships is that they are notoriously hard to find because the majority of the ships were built out of wood. And so when they wreck, they splinter on the ocean floor. And I saw somewhere in the comments that Boston is cold, like the water is cold. Trying to search there isn't easy. So we have to get clues from the archives. Like historians are often the ones that start the work and they find clues in the archives, and then that leads to divers going down to confirm or to check their hypothesis or their hints. Um, and this hasn't been an area where there's been a lot of investment to do the research and to do the work, but I think that's beginning to change. So I hope that we will find more, and I'm sure that there's some off the coast, more off the coast of Boston.
World of where I think we can go. We've been doing work. I go to a synagogue and a youth church, and we've been doing work on repair. We just had a big one of like the beginning of our ceremonies, commemorating the enslaved people who, well, basically worked at the church for free. Like for many of you, you all know that in many New England churches, the ministers owned other human beings. And so this was news to so many of us, even just 5-10 years ago. So we've been looking deeper on the history level to find out where the people came from. Where were they from? Born in Barbados? Were they born in Africa? Did they come that way? Were some of them born in this country? And of course, in the old histories, the pages are like a few paragraphs long. And we've been doing some digging with our town history. It's been a long process, but I don't want to keep you anymore. Except I did want to say one thing. When you were mentioning not knowing the names of the enslaver ships, Phyllis Wheatley, from what I understand, is named for the ship that she was enslaved on here, the Phyllis. So when you said you didn't know of many, and I was like, oh my gosh, but that one stuck in my brain. So
Mhm.
it just made me think of that and what a neat way to name some. Thank you again for your gorgeous work.
Thank you, Ellen. I just if there's not another question, I just noticed someone on the chat that I just want to shout out. It's Renata Yarborough Sanders, who was the genealogist who helped me discover my link to the past. Hi, Renata. She's featured in my book. I feel very thankful and grateful to her for helping me not be afraid of the past. I have to say, I was a bit, even though I was doing this work, there was a part of me that was a little afraid to really step into the truth of my ancestors as enslaved people. And I thought it would just be full of stories of pain. But because of Renata's help and patience and deep digging, we found some incredible details about my ancestors that have connected me to them in a way that matters so deeply and that really roots me in a way that I didn't even know I was needing to be rooted. So just hi, shout out, thank you.
Thank you again so much, Tara. This has been an incredible, like, moving presentation. Again, we can pick up your book, listen to the podcast. I'm excited about what the future holds. I know you can't tell us, I know, but exactly. Something definitely sounds like it's afoot, and any way that we can commemorate these 12 million, more than 12 million people, souls that came over and, like you said, changed the shape of the globe. It's global history. And boy, we're happy to have you. Oh, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Harris Gibson, do you have a question? I don't want to close
Not
before.
not a question. It's just that
Okay.
I don't know if our speaker is aware that scuba diving is being taught in relationship to a slave ship in Alabama, Clotilda. The ship was finally detected underwater. I don't know how difficult. I saw it when I was about 8 years old. My dad showed me what was sticking out of the water, but I thought it was washed out to sea. It was not. It was deeper at the mouth of the Mobile River in Mobile Bay. And that was the last slave ship known to come to America, and it was sank intentionally by the ship owners because it was illegal to import slaves after 1808. But now that it's been found again in association with the Africa Town, it's called Africa Town Celebration, they are teaching scuba diving to the kids in Mobile, Alabama. Now, it started about 2 years ago when the ship was rediscovered. And I think part of your legacy will be associated with that kind of activity.
Definitely. The Clotilda is an incredible story. We talk about it in the podcast and in the book. We're very familiar with Africatown and the Africatown Descendants Association. We actually have another film out. It's a Nat Geo produced film called Clotilda, The Return Home. And we took four of the Clotilda descendants. We had them trace the root of their ancestors. So there's a man named Cudjoe Lewis, who was the last male survivor of a slave ship still alive in the 1930s. And Zora Neale Hurston, incredible writer, wrote a book called Barracoon, which featured his story. Cudjoe has a number of descendants, and he left a map for his descendants telling them exactly where he came from on the continent. So we took his descendants back. We followed the directions on that map um, back to his home in Benin. So if you're interested in watching that story, it's on Hulu and Disney Plus. It's called Clotilda: The Return Home. And then the Africa Descendants Association, I believe, you can correct me if I'm incorrect, Harris, but they've also produced a film on Netflix called Descendant, and it is beautiful and well done. The Clotilda, if I had more time, I mean, it is a deeply inspiring story. It's an incredible story in so many ways. So if you have time to look that up, it is worth digging into. So thank you for mentioning that, Harris. That's great.
Amazing. You guys have such wonderful commentary. Do you have any more comments or questions? Okay. Well, I think this concludes another. Oh no, Douglas. Okay. Unmute yourself, friend. Yes. Oh, you're gonna have to unmute if you just. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to clarify something. So there was 12,000 different ships altogether, or 12,000 voyages?
There were 12,000 different ships, and they think that there were 36,000 voyages because some
Wow.
ships made the journey more than once.
Because, okay, I just checked on ChatGPT, and so they're lying. They're saying there was 12,000 voyages and probably a few thousand ships.
Yeah.
To
If
let
you
you know.
go, one of the best resources, if you're interested in the ships and the journey,
Yeah.
is the slave trade database. It's
Yeah.
slavevoyages.org, and it lists literally every single ship, and it tells you how many people were on the ship in the beginning, how many
Great.
people embarked, and how many people disembarked. And it tells you when they left. They have this beautiful time lapse that shows the ships making the journeys over the years. So you can see how it
Wow.
starts slowly in the early 1500s. You can see it picking
Yeah.
up, and then in like 1600s, 1700s, it's like so many lines moving forward. So anyway, it's a great resource. And
Right.
they say that there were 12,000 ships and 36,000
Wow.
voyages.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you, Tara.
you're welcome.
Thank you so much. And then Tara, I know that Miss Ellen Fine has left her email for you as well, so I can share that.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for taking the time out. All of you, Tara, for giving this presentation, all of you for joining us. Again, you're so dedicated and we're so very grateful for your participation. Thank you again, Tara. And I guess
Thank you.
we'll be
Thank you for
signing
having
off.
me.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Till next